Thank you, Mr. Igor. Thanks everybody for attention and coming here. I'm sure that this discussion is one of the most interesting at the forum and at the conference, and I'm glad to see that a lot of people actually came in comparison to what we had in the beginning. I wanted to comment a bit on what previous speaker said. I agree to major extent to all the description of geopolitical situation, but for us, as for country and as for state policy developers, the most important thing is to understand how we need to act in all this pessimistic, I would say, geopolitical environment. However, Andreas actually highlighted a very interesting idea how to securitize Ukraine and how to, as a state. So I think it should be worthwhile for our state leadership looking into this idea. My presentation today basically covers all the topics that were raised in the description of this panel. So I wanted to everything's on the screen. Okay, so a bit about us, a bit about Ukroboronprom, which stands for Ukrainian Defense Industry. We are a largest state holding company in the legal form of concern or consortium, which unites around 100 production facilities, which is basically the biggest what remained after the Soviet heritage in the defense industry in Ukraine. So historically, Ukraine was around 1/3 of Soviet Union defense industry. Now it decreased majorly because there's no such conditions for existence of 700 factories which existed during Soviet times. But nonetheless, we're quite big. Still more than 80,000 employees basically in all regions of Ukraine and great capabilities in major defense sectors. So here you see the map of Ukraine, which shows a number of production facilities in each region of Ukraine. You see that we're quite diversified in terms of geography, and on the left you see the sectors of production where Ukroboronprom is present today. So these are 5 major sectors: armored vehicles, aerospace, aviation, navy, rocket artillery and munitions, and electronics, radars, air defense, etc. Some facilities were seized in Donbass and Crimea. You see their respective number there on the map, but fortunately the war didn't start in one day, so we were able to evacuate a lot of people and a lot of technical documentation, which is the critical thing for defense production. And a lot of things that were manufactured on those facilities are now being transferred to other production facilities. Here you see a bit the role of Ukroboronprom in defense market. So at the present moment we're an organization which combines not very logical functions as for one organization, because we are at the same time a holding company and a regulator, which is quite rudimentary for modern business and modern actually state management systems, so and especially in European context. We have both at the same time. We have production facilities, basically subsidiaries, trading companies, so-called special exporters. We act as association, as a representative of Ukraine in North Atlantic relations. So we represent Ukraine before Ukrainian defense industry before NATO and EU. So basically act as an agency, and also we supply all defense items which come from outside Ukraine to our different militarized organizations, which you see on the right on the slide. Here is a bigger description of our capabilities, not very visible for you probably, so just to highlight that in each sector we are quite capable, so have a closed cycle of production of anything that you can imagine, starting from 4x4 vehicle, finishing with a Navy ship. We're trying to be more transparent and progressive, so although we're not obliged by law to post our yearly reports, but nonetheless we did it last year. And just briefly about the results, what has been achieved. You can see that in comparison to 2014, there was a rather big net profit in comparison to losses in 2014. You see the number of the net profit comprised 1.5 billion UA hryvnia. Then there was 4.3 billion in taxes paid. The average salary in Ukroboronprom enterprises is almost 6,000 UA hryvnia, which is on average 20% bigger than generally in Ukraine. And you see some numbers of equipment which was supplied to the Ministry of Defense and the National Guard in the bottom. So quite big numbers and a huge increase in comparison to what was in 2013 and even in 2014. The reason for this is that for 25 years there was virtually no state policy for developing the defense industry. So basically most of the activity of export activity concerned selling of the army stock, which was then in huge excess because of the Soviet Union policy to keep army stock here on the west border. So Ukraine probably had in fact one of the biggest armies in the world and probably one of the largest military stock. Since the war started, this process stopped. By law, it's not possible now to sell army stock. And at the same time, we have to provide our armed forces with equipment, and at the same time maintain the level of foreign business at the level which allows our enterprises to function. So in basically 1.5 years or 2 years, we had to shift from selling those stock to production of new equipment, and we actually succeeded in that, and you see the numbers which in certain way arguments this success. So some more specifics. So these numbers wouldn't tell you much, but nonetheless, you see that they're quite big in comparison to the fact that still in 2013 there was no state order. In 2014, the state defense order for equipment came out only, if I'm not mistaken, in September. So basically, when the war was already continuing for 3 months. It was rather hard to shift the system and to make it working, but I think for the last 2 years it was our main achievement. Some facts about launching of serial production of different equipment, starting from UAVs, finishing with main battle tanks, and modernization of fighter jets according to NATO standards. Certain decisions were taken in order to prevent corruption. Actually, our form of consortium allowed us not to wait for adoption of the law for public procurement, which came into force only on 1st of April 2016. So we launched e-procurement for our enterprises as back as in November 2014. So since then until the end of 2015, 2015, we were able to save more than 300 million hryvnia only on procurement. So, and some other numbers which we of saving money on making some internal business processes more effective. Other management decisions which led to starting of design and development of various products such as tactical UAV, a big UAV, then some modern 3D surveillance radars and other equipment which is such as howitzers, mortars. Already all this equipment is being designed and developed already according to NATO standards. Some of the examples of launching of international cooperation for the last 2 years as we are trying to adjust our policy to the general state strategy of integration to NATO and application and implementation of NATO standards. So today, the most interesting thing which is happening in the defense market globally is that Russia, which is historically a second biggest supplier of defense equipment worldwide after US, but which used to supply to more than half of the world, is now losing a lot of their markets because they're not a reliable supplier. They always behaved as a monopolist, and their supplies of defense equipment by Russia presumes that there is a political influence from Russia to the country to which it supplies. So take into consideration the fact that there are more than 70, or I would say up to 100 countries in the world which use post-Soviet equipment. We have quite a big market on the worldwide scale. Therefore, also considering that we are capable of doing basically the same things as Russia does with equipment, so in aviation, in all kinds of aviation, starting from helicopters, finishing with transport aviation, in armored vehicles, in Navy, we are able to provide the same capabilities for those countries which Russia did so. And by way of cooperation with Western companies from NATO member states, we can even increase those capabilities, because you don't have to, you don't need to buy 1,000 tanks each year or even 100 tanks. If some country has 1,000 tanks already in its stock, it needs just modernization, because the life cycle, modernization of those tanks, because the life cycle of equipment is 50 years, for instance. So each 20 years they just modernize that equipment and put in Western electronics, put in some modern technical decisions, allows to create added value for those equipment. And combination of all these factors, which I just explained, leads us to increase of the market. And in fact, we can confirm it by numbers. Here you see the map and the geography of our supplies. Dark blue is where we don't supply, and where we didn't supply. So basically for all the geography which you see in Southeast Asia, in Asia mainly, in Middle East and Africa, we see a really big increase of the interest for in our orders. So for last year, the number of concluded contracts raised to $1.3 billion, excluding the ones that were concluded by Antonov and other by Antonov. So this is not less than what was before the war in 2013, and even 20% bigger, if I'm not mistaken. So I think 2015 was the last year of the drop in revenues, and since 2016 our prognosis that the revenue should start growing, and we should reach around 1 billion revenue, external revenue, I apologize, in 2016. So some of the examples which we were able to accomplish, some of the projects for the last few years. The main one, I would say the main one, because it's the most interesting one, and it's the first example of industrial cooperation of major US defense contractor with Ukraine, which foresees modernization of existing Humvees in Ukrainian stock for to the level of a very durable and protected armored vehicle. Would not go too much into specifics, just a few examples. So a partnership on creation of joint venture for vests and helmets production, partnership for creation and modernization of armored vehicles with modern optical devices with Poland. Then with Turkey for the same, basically the same market, we have a partnership already in place. Also for electronics with another Turkish company, there is already a quite a big project is under development where we believe there will be created a joint venture on the territory of Ukraine as soon as the law allows us. Some other interesting things, we're participating in a Canadian tender for a fixed-wing search and rescue aircraft with an Antonov platform and with engagement of Canadian producers whose equipment would be integrated into an Antonov platform. So these just leads us to showing all the world that there is a very big interest and possibility to invest in Ukrainian defense industry, especially in aviation, because our design and R&D capabilities are one of the best in the world. Ukraine had historically very good schools of engineering in all defense spheres, and it still remained. So for Antonov, you see a few examples of projects that are either possible or are already under consideration and in talks with foreign companies. Also some other things, don't want to take too much time from other speakers, so if you would be interested, I'll send then, I'll mail you the presentation, or the organizers can do that. Some of examples of NATO activity that we're doing now. We are participating in different formats under NATO auspices, under the department which is called Defense Investment in NATO. Actually engage in a lot of other Ukrainian partners such as UARPA into those formats as well. There's a lot of things going on in the NATO context, and this activity is led by the Ministry of Defense, of course, but as an industry we participate and help NATO countries actually in their studies for the new defense equipment, considering our engineering capabilities, as I said previously. Some other examples, such as provision of strategic airlift capabilities to NATO countries. So NATO knows us quite well, and they know how we can cooperate together. So we both on the military side and on the industry side. The context of European Security Charter, there was a topic which in this panel. So just a brief summary. Which leads to a conclusion that Ukraine has to sign this agreement because it's well, as it is always in international relations, it's very important to establish some kind of a framework, and we have to be in this framework agreement if we want to develop ourselves more effective in the context of European and NATO integration. So what are the problems actually in attraction of investment? It is forbidden by law still for state enterprises, all our subsidiaries are actually state enterprises, to you see participate in the capital of foreign companies. There are restrictions on the percentage of shares in such a in a joint venture if it is created with a state enterprise. Actually, there is a direct prohibition to include property rights or just assets into the authorized capital of a joint venture, which basically contradicts the previous one. So the law is really a mess in this regard. Fortunately, as far as I know, Cabinet of Ministers finally, after 1.5 years of our requests, initiated a draft law before Verkhovna Rada on 5th of May, which we actually proposed for 1.5 years previously, which would allow defense enterprises to start creating at least joint ventures. So the restrictions, we hope, would be eliminated in the nearest future, and this is the main thing which actually forbids or restricts foreign companies into to fully start to exploit all the opportunities that exist in Ukraine in terms of defense investment. So thanks for attention. I will be very much eager to answer all your questions.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive briefing, and of course thank you for what you mentioned. You are as a partner of Ukroboronprom. So I have one short question, if it's possible to get short answer. Because technological nature of this conflict, and which kind of problems do you see, which kind of solutions can you propose in terms of implementation of new technologies in Ukroboronprom facilities? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Igor. Very specific question and a very important one. It could take 1 more hour to to answer this, and I think you would be even a better answeree to this question than me, because I'm not from military. But what I definitely know is that you even saw it on our slides, some of new developments that were launched. So firstly, we need to tell the truth before ourselves that the Ukrainian army was totally not prepared for the conflict in terms of technological development. So even 1.5 years ago, Russian army was much more sophisticated in terms of their electronic warfare capability, in terms of simply communication, in terms of surveillance, in all those modern spheres which Ukraine didn't develop for the last 25 years, in which West and Russia went forward. Fortunately, as far as I see, now Ukrainian industry, both state and private, is able to provide all those technological solutions to Ukrainian army. Not to the full extent, not to the scale that we want to. There are also budgetary restrictions because to my mind, our state defense order is still not adequate to the threats that we face. Although we have more than 100 billion hryvnia in budget, only 7 billion of those are devoted to the Ministry of Defense procurement, which is nothing, which is $300 million. This is less than Azerbaijan 5 times. So what are we talking about? I mean, for technological, advantage. But nonetheless, Ukrainian equipment is durable. It's good. There are a lot of really bright engineers which were able for 1.5 years to launch a whole UAV industry in Ukraine. I'm sure that that's the example which none of the countries in the world, even such as Israel, faced. Can you imagine 1.5 years we're already producing small tactical UAVs, and in half a year we'll be producing already a tactical UAV. This is, I'm sure it's something very unique in the world. And for other things as well, for communication, we're now much more developed than we were 1.5 years ago. There is already at least some decent level of secure communication, or at least for those battalions which participate in the anti-terrorist operation. So for military and for experts, I think all the threats were clear in the very beginning. Of course, the path is very hard, taking into account level of Ukrainian bureaucracy. I faced it myself, so our team had to start the whole import procedure to Ukraine of military equipment, it was never done before by anybody, so nobody systematically imported necessary defense items to Ukraine, and so the system was really hard to start moving. But I think we did not the state did not everything what it could do, but it did more than it could to secure the situation.